Today I'm meeting with Brett Magleby of Panther Investigations, and we've been really happy to meet with Panther Investigations. They've been very accommodating, and you've probably seen some of our other videos that we've made with them as well. And so there are different subject matters that each person has covered. But Brett, what are we going to be talking about with you today?
Well, one of the things that we've really discovered, and we've been doing this for about 5 years, is that as former police officers, and all of us are in the agency, we've done a lot of investigations where we had an opportunity to review facts and police reports, and it's been a little disheartening. We're very fond of our brothers in blue and understand intimately what they have to deal with in a modern police setting on case investigation. What we've really discovered through our investigations is almost without exclusion there, we have found that many of these police cases have more investigation that needs to be done. So having a private investigator and coming from a law enforcement background and seeing the value of actually having the time and resources to look at some of these cases has really been an eye-opener for us, and that's sort of what we wanted to address a little bit. One of the attorneys came to us and said, I just want the facts of the case. Wherever it leads, that's okay, but if I have the facts, I can do a proper representation for my client. That may involve a plea, it may exonerate a client, we don't know, but he wants the facts, and that's what he's looking for, so he can make an honest representation to a prosecutor, perhaps, on what's going on.
So there are such attorneys that actually exist like that?
Yes,
okay.
I would say that they do exist.
Okay.
And fortunately, we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of those attorneys. But what we've discovered on a routine basis, and I'll give you some examples. One case that involves a very serious allegation of sexual abuse, where our client could be facing 30 years in prison. During the course of the investigation, we discovered a lot of the evidence had not been put forward. There was also interviews with witnesses, like a primary witness who would have been paramount to the investigation, who was never interviewed, who was a first-hand witness to all the events prior to an alleged incident that occurred with the client. And those are the type of things that it's a little disheartening, but we recognize that in the law enforcement world, time and resources are not always available for law enforcement officers, and it's not a disrespect for the officers, because we realize, personally having been there, that all of those guys and women that are doing investigations would probably want to be more thorough, but the fact is they have 100 or 200 cases in their queue at any given time, and a lot of times these cases are passed on to a prosecutor almost prematurely, and prosecutors make decisions based on information that is available to them, but maybe not as detailed as it could be. And so in review of these cases, we've actually been able to really bring forth evidence to both the prosecutor as well as our attorneys that we work with that exonerates clients based on just a more detailed investigation. And
not a matter of what, just you're not a second opinion. You're actually finding those witnesses. You're finding those other bits of evidence that aren't coming up.
Absolutely. We've and it's really happened so routinely that I've realized the value, having been on the other side of the table now, I realize the value of having a strong, independent investigation and a review of what police officers have done. And not that they're inept or unqualified, it's just oftentimes they're going to pick the low-hanging fruit. They're going to get the cases that have a suspect that will confess or that is easy to find. And
I would think also that there are certain crimes that are more important than others, and so some crimes are going to get less attention simply because, as you said, there's only a limited amount of time and resources, and we've got to go find the rapists and the murderers.
Absolutely.
And things like that, and sometimes the burglaries and the disorderly conducts, or the neighbors that are a real pain, or the stalkers. it's not that they're not important, it's just that, well, we've got a rapist and a stalker, we'll go chase the rapist down first.
Right, and because they have an intense caseload, and because overtime's not necessarily granted in most departments, and for cases, and they have a limited time. Most police officers have 2 or 3 jobs that they're working in addition to their full-time job. I'm sure the officers would love to stay in and get extensive overtime to work all the backlog on their cases if that was an opportunity for them to do that.
That's something I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, in most cases, unless you're in a specialty unit, you're not going to be allowed unlimited overtime. You're going to get your 40 hours a week, and then you're going to have to work your part-time jobs to make ends meet. Would they like to do more thorough investigations? I absolutely believe that, you know, the guys that I've worked with are honorable guys, and they want to do that. But oftentimes, it's like we don't have the time or resources. We're going to pass this on to a paralegal in the prosecutor's office, and they will decide whether or not charges are filed. And oftentimes, there is charges filed when a detailed investigation may not warrant that. That's what we're finding.
That puts a more human face on things, because I can become pretty judgmental as an attorney myself when I see what I think was an incomplete or a shoddy investigation. But it's sometimes just a matter of somebody might even be willing, if they didn't think their butt would get in a sling, to say, no, I agree, there's more that could have been done here, but I did all that I was allowed to do
In the time frames that I had.
I wanted to ask you a follow-up then. So having a law enforcement background, if you ever try to work with law enforcement, do you get treated with hostility, or do you get treated with mutual respect because you're former law enforcement and the people in the agency are?
Actually, to be honest, I think the latter is true. It's mutual respect. I think they know we understand what's going on. We have a really good rapport. We have all the investigators here.
Are they afraid that you're going to show them up, though? It's like, look, I know that you're trying to do your best, but even though you are, I just don't want to be very cooperative, because I'm afraid you'll find the shell casing I didn't find, or you'll find that fingerprint, or that, or that document, or that account that I was right in front of me, but I was busy and distracted, but people are just going to call me incompetent. Does that come up?
Well, I'll tell you, my personal feeling is that, and my experience is that, really most officers are as worried about the accuser and the accused. I mean, they want to do a good job and have all the facts out there, because they do not. I haven't really seen this in my career where they want to put someone in jail or in custody just based on their reputation, or because they can sort of get the big dog and have notoriety from that. Most officers that I know and personally have worked with want all the facts, and they want to be thorough in their investigation, because they want to be fair.
So a private investigator would only help augment the fact that, hey, if we were going down the wrong path and a private investigator's information and investigation showed us otherwise, we'd be relieved, and we'd be glad that the wrong path was not being followed.
I think
well,
that's my personal experience, that most officers
I'm glad to hear that.
want that experience. I'm not saying there are not exceptions to that, and we've seen some things that maybe look like a little more egregious prosecutions without, but I would say for the most part, our experience is that officers are willing to work with us if we find information that they want to be aware of it as well.
And it's nice to know that private investigators are there, because police officers who might be tend to be lax would know, look, I got to do at least as good a job as I can, because if a private investigator were to show up and like you say, find some other witnesses or find other documents that I could have and should have found, let me be as thorough as I can under the circumstances.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's not a matter of too many cooks spoiling the soup.
Yeah, and I think there's oftentimes evidence out there that needs to come forward, and we have we being involved in a case and asking for it. We've seen cases where some evidence that might be exculpatory to a client has not always surfaced in a timely manner, and that's highly concerning to us. And knowing that we're in the picture and that we're putting some pressure on the officers and on the system to provide that information in a timely manner is imperative to a good defense. And I think that's where we've come into play, is that we've been able to, because we have a reputation as law enforcement officers, we're well respected in the communities that we work in. They know that if we're involved in the case, that I would expect most officers are going to understand that they're going to need to do a top-notch investigation if we're following up behind them. So I think that's where we have some influence and some effectiveness in private investigations.
if somebody has a problem, if they're facing prosecution, or they're facing some kind of civil liability or something like that, or in a divorce and family situation, any of those things, is there a cost for coming in to speak with you and to see what a private investigator might be able to do for me?
No, we're absolutely do free consultations, and we'll take, the time that we need with clients to find out what they're facing. And, I can think of a recent case where we had someone come in and they were accused of a sexual crime. And what we discovered really in short order after getting the facts and finding out from them is that, and which was never really developed in the law enforcement investigation, is that the victim had some extreme credibility issues. In fact, to the point where we couldn't, in the investigation, we couldn't even find anybody in this particular case who would even support the alleged victim in any, they called her a pathological liar, that kind of thing, and there was people actually were avoiding the victim at all costs, and what happened is really that the investigation could have probably yielded the fact that the victim had some accountability issues and maybe even had done a lot of things that were well documented, and so those type of things maybe should have been vetted early.
Let me ask you about that then. So if we're dealing with like a sexual assault or some kind of an assault case, or maybe something involving just some people that, neighbors that don't get along, or some domestic violence or things like that, how much do you think that's going to cost me, and how long does the investigation take generally, knowing of course that each case is unique?
Well, every case is different, obviously. We've done some very extensive white collar cases that will last months and involve a high dollar amount, millions and millions of dollars. And those are going to be pretty extreme cases where there's going to be a lot of money involved. But for the most part, a case, what we've seen, can be anywhere. On an average case, I would say $1,500 to $2,000 is what you may have to put out, a retainer. And then what we kind of do is, when you go through your retainer, we'll talk to you about the case, see where we're at, see what the information we have, and then decide whether or not we have some valid reasons to go forward with the case and do some more investigation. And our clients have been really good to work with us, because we can get to a certain point and there might be 3 or 4 interviews that are really valuable that we need to complete, and we'll talk to the client, give them an opportunity to stop right now or to go on. So we never sort of run reckless through our investigations. We basically will stop when the retainer is expended, and then we'll have that dialogue
so
with
that I
our
can make an
clients.
informed decision as to
Yeah.
whether it's worthwhile to keep going, or if I should just cut my losses.
And the consultation will be with your attorney as well, and say, this is what we got to this point, what do you want to do? We would suggest stopping here, or we think we have, some cases we have, and within a few days, all the evidence the client needs.
Or you
Now
may have
there's-
spent $2,000 that we didn't really find much,
Yeah.
except this lead that we think might actually strike oil.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of where we're at. So we just basically will get the client and the defense counsel involved in everything that we're doing, so that what we're doing will be
Alright.
sufficient for everybody.
That was great, and that I've learned something that I didn't know, and I'm sure that the people watching have as well. For those that would like to get together with you or somebody else in the agency, could you give us your contact information?
Yeah, we can be contacted at 801-739-7039, or our email address is info@panthersi@gmail.com.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.